Thank you for tuning in to WTS Sky. This is Mari. I had a broadcast earlier today. I had some audio issues and I was missing my friend Wendy. And we're going to rehash some of the topics that I covered this morning. And I'm going to introduce you. Wendy, thank you for coming on the channel here. This is a thought collective project, basically. So your input is super important. And I think the more we get into this, the audience will understand what we're trying to do here as a thought collective. So how are you doing today?
I'm good, Mari. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to talking about these topics.
We have wacky conversations about everything from aliens to interdimensional beings to just Jesus Christ walking on this earth, which is awesome. So what I want to cover today is some stuff about energy and how the sun's, like I was talking to you before, how the sun's magnetic energy is actually affecting not only the earth and our magnetosphere, but also our own energy as humans, and then all the funky stuff that's going on in the world, how everything sort of is its own crazy symphony of different energies that people are trying to process either knowingly or unknowingly. If that's an easy introduction to what we're going to be covering today. So where do you want to start?
Oh boy, I don't know. I guess we could start anywhere. I mean, where my perception's from,
sense?
I'm basically a super feeler.
A super feeler?
Yeah.
So
No, it does. Yeah, I'm a super feeler. I walk through life feeling everything and trying to figure it out while you're, more scientific minded, which is great because as a person that, is just feeling their way through life, I love music, that type of thing. Maybe your typical stereotypical, which I don't even like to put myself in that box, but to, maybe um be able to identify with other people. That's kind of where I actually merged those two understandings, like your scientific with the super feeler right brain artist perspective. And I got to be honest with you, I never thought I'd be studying physics, but I will tell you that it has been groundbreaking in my understanding of my existence in totality. So
it's interesting. The more you dig within yourself, the more you start simplifying things, and this is where I've been talking to you a lot about this is simplicity in some of the terminology, not only in science but religious texts, how everything can pretty much be dwindled down into energy, and how there's a positive, a neutral, and a negative energy, which is, let me pull up it's essentially an atom. So when you think about an atom, you have a neutron, a proton, and an electron, right?
mm-hmm.
And those three components, that trinity, which is interesting, this trinity has its own magnetic field just in the atom alone, which is interesting. Atom, like Adam and Eve, atom, atom. It's interesting, the things, and this is what me and you go on and on about when we have our phone conversations. So we're like, why don't we turn this into something where we're having a huge thought collective and having people with minds like ours sort of meet and put our ideas out. I believe people who think like us are authentic individuals. So we offer a good perspective, or an interesting perspective, than what society and mainstream media put out. Let me pull out my thing.
Well, and I think just to interject this, I think a lot of people would be surprised if, because I got to say, even myself, we all tend to, because we're born into this world and then we're told certain things and then believing that that's the way we are. And of course, we all gravitate to our own unique, I'll just say it, illumination, which can be described later. But we all have our own unique way to exist in this world. And so it's kind of like, how do we live harmoniously with everyone else? But it's almost like, the right and the left, this big political debate right now, right? Everybody's like, oh, I'm with the right, I'm with the left. Well, I've always said, why do we even have these right and left? Why don't we just have people that run for office and then you vote on them? Like, this has always been confusing to me.
Mm.
Um, but we just accept it. Well, this brings us back to, there is a way to be true to yourself and exist. And so I think my whole point in that is, I think even people that maybe, I don't know, I guess my challenge is, if you think you're in a bucket and that's what you believe, that's great. And
Then you're in a bucket.
well, but then if you really believe that, but I guess what I'm saying is, if you think you're in that bucket, do you think you're in that bucket because that's really who you are, or are you in that bucket because you were told, like your parents were in that bucket, and so you therefore evolved in that bucket? And these are questions you have to ask within.
Yeah, we create our own reality, and with the physics that I talk about, there's a chaotic magnetic energy that is moving, and it doesn't only affect the earth, but it affects individuals, and
Hmm.
that looking within and sort of going with the flow and understanding, I think having the understanding that there's an outside source affecting how people are feeling is a good way to identify people, for people to identify their emotions and sort of transmute the
Hmm.
energy, whether it be in a positive or negative light. If they know that we're going through an energetic shift as a human race, something the humans haven't seen in about 350 years, like this big shift that has been not well documented in history, but sort of has through the 1600s with the Maunder minimum, um, this solar magnetic energy.
Well, again, coming from a place, and this is why I like speaking with you, because it opens my mind and I'm actually open to receive it. And so as we've evolved into, where we are today, 2022, I often think back because I'm a Gen Xer like you, right? So
Mhm.
I'm like thinking, life just felt different, right? It just, and I'm not talking just technology. Like, if we really think about it internally, so how it, and again, I'm a super feeler, right? So I'm not the scientific, so I'm coming from a feeler, but I'm
Mhm.
sure a lot of people could probably think like, man, what did I feel like? Now, why does that matter? Feelings don't matter. They absolutely matter. We've been told that they don't matter, but that's really not true. They matter a lot. Um, and it actually, by feeling, you actually can control your feelings. Isn't that funny? Because they say you need to control your feelings, which leads the mind to believe that you need to like push your feelings down. Like, you need to push and control them. But really, what people should be thinking is, I need to feel and understand, so and add your mind, right, your heart and your mind and your feelings, and then you can control them through your feelings. It sounds weird, but
It's I get what you're saying. It's like this constant. We were laughing earlier. We're calling it mental kung fu. So you take, well, since the early 2000s, where technology really took off. I've been a part of the tech industry for a while. I was working at a
mm,
Microsoft call center during the Y2K like scare. So
mhm,
if you look back on technology and you're talking about being a feeler, look at how awesome the technology is at connecting us, but also at the same time it's desensitized a lot of people
mhm,
in other ways. And I believe like the tech in general is, if you look, say, at how many Wi-Fi networks are in your area or how many cell phone towers,
mhm,
everything's sound, frequency, and vibration. And
mhm,
compared to 10 years ago, what we're dealing with the tech industry when it comes to sound, frequency, and vibration, when people have like 20 Wi-Fi gadgets in their house, 3 of them are
mhm,
5G, and like then your neighbors have it, and then your people across the street, forward, backwards, and all sides, you're getting shifting your body subconsciously is transmuting all this energy,
Mhm.
and you're like, people are tired and they don't know why they're
Yep.
tired. And it has to, the topics that we're going to be covering, they're hard to explain. So I mean, you might find me stuttering around or trying to, like we were saying the other day, like sometimes you have to talk in parables, like the Bible says, to understand some of the Bible teachings about being like Christ. You have to sort of put things into perspective, like in parables, and
Mhm.
finding modern terms to convey our messages and concerns about the future and the changes that the human race is going to, in a language like the Bible, like with parables, like how to
Mhm.
sculpt the human race, sorta, to take this weird negative polarized vibration that we're dealing with right now, and shifting it into a higher level of consciousness, which I believe the sun will have an effect on people. I believe going into the grand solar minimum, shifting into 2030, this magnetosphere is going to thin. It's going to allow cosmic rays in. I call cosmic rays cosmic knowledge. And I believe this shift is actually going to evolve the human race and push the human race
Mhm.
forward. But it's a mindset. And it takes society as a whole to recognize that we're shifting as a human race, and they have to acknowledge it enough to look within, to have that self-awareness of what they're feeling. Because when you're a feeler, so you are
Mhm.
always, at any time you're a feeler, you're processing your every action. You have a lot of reflection. You have these conscious moments no matter what you're doing, how you're doing it, how you're feeling, and
And
what the
other
in
people's energies, and I didn't understand that. That's why this, not to interrupt you, that's why this is so groundbreaking for somebody that is just feeling their way through life, which a lot of people,
your audio
there's
keeps on
doesn't
breaking
mean
out.
you're,
I don't know why.
dumb or it just, we wonder why our electronics are glitching more, and I can tell you that I believe I know why, and it's because there is and when you do not understand that the planet itself has massive energy components. What is energy? Well, we can get into all that, and Mari can explain that better than me from a scientific perspective, because I'll take you down a parabolicious road, is what I call it. I say parabolicious. We all need to become parabolicious.
You
um,
can learn a lot from parables. So I've learned a lot of
well, they kind of,
science just out of the
yeah.
Bible, which is interesting.
Well, they're like lessons, but they're in stories. So what's interesting about stories is, or parables, is they really become a living, breathing um, um, application, if you will. So you can take this story and how it applies to a time period. But if you are thinking in that mindset, then you can take that story and apply it to all time. It becomes timeless. That's why parables are so great. And those are the things that if you can get yourself in that mindset, and they can carry over, they help form society in a way that if you're looking at it from a literal sense, that's a little dense, but even if you are, it's still probably better than nothing to lead someone down a better way of living. um, but then when you realize that it's an application of a concept, then you really
So
can start seeing the magic of it all.
speaking of let me just, I wanted to cover something. Let me adjust the screen. So I was talking to you about how ungrounded people used to be, or seem to be actually, and the 369 concept when it comes
Hmm.
to understanding why people are so chaotic in society. these days, and
Mm.
there's all different millions of different ways you can look at 369, from sacred geometry to mathematics. There are power numbers. They constantly repeat throughout 1 through 9. If you add them up, there's a lot of different patterns, and three always represented, in biblical texts and in mythology, three has the significance for God.
It's ironic to me because I also come from a I guess you could call it Christian background, but I really, again, I'm not big on labels of anything, but that's the way we define things. But a Trinity aspect, it's interesting because you've got the Holy Trinity, which is applied in many different religions and sects and different things.
And
So just
I look at the Trinity like as balance. Like that is the balance of good, bad, and then the neutral is like the anchor, like in the middle for the
kind
number
of like the yin
three.
and the yang
So there's
a
actually
little
like
bit.
a yin and yang that has three pieces to it. It's not a yin and yang. It's like a tri yin. I don't know what it's called, but anyway,
A trang, a triang,
I
a
don't know.
triang.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
I
I look
wasn't
at the
ready
yin
for
and the
that one,
yang.
but
Yeah, I look at the yin and the yang, like there's a neutral there too. It's the curved line that goes down the middle. That's how I kind of look at it. So that would be the neutral
see,
spot in my perspective.
I think yin yang is a good concept because it does, the dots I think represent God. But if you look at,
Yeah.
um like say the 6 and 369, like, and
Yes.
you compare it to society, the masculine energies and the female energies
Mhm.
are resembled in the number 6. And
Yes.
then
Yes.
9 is like the masculine energies and the feminine energies with God, which is like a stable foundation. So like
Yep.
in society right now, with this energetic shift that we're talking about, like males are having this chaotic energy because they're feeling some feminine energy come in, but they don't understand it as feminine energy. It's like this chaotic energy, like they're feeling more emotional, or they're
Mhm.
getting more feeling. And then females as well are either shifting to like a more dominant role or a more submissive, like it's like this shift. And every human has masculine and feminine energies, and the key
Within.
is to balance them within. So like we were talking about with the chaos in society, with this energy, people not being able, they don't understand that this shift is happening, so they don't have a way to really transmute
Yeah.
the information to even help themselves, like to look within and be like, you know what, why am I feeling this way? Is this my energy, or is this someone else's energy like popping off because we're in some weird times? And do I have the consciousness level to be able to come without outside myself and see how others are perceiving a particular situation, I guess.
Well, I want to throw something in here really quick, which I collect old books. I know we've talked about this before, but about 3 years ago, I just had this insatiable need to collect old books. I can't tell you what it was, but again, I'm a student of feeling, so I just do things, and it makes no sense to anyone else. I'll just randomly do things, and so I got some of these old Bibles. Okay, like from the 1800s and earlier, even I have one from 1607 too, which is really interesting, that predates the King James version. So, but within these old Bibles, it's interesting because there's the Apocrypha books. Well, you get a lot of people that say that the Apocrypha wasn't, or the Gnostic Gospels and things like that, they were not part of the original canon of the Bible. Well, that's not exactly true. Some of them were. Apocrypha is what they call it. And you can look up the definition or whatever online of what the Apocrypha is. But in that definition, I challenge that a little bit too, because the original canon of the Bible had some Apocrypha books. Within those Apocrypha books, which were removed from modern biblical text, it references that our God, source, whatever you want to call it doesn't matter to me, honestly. and really doesn't matter to God either. I don't, basically. But anyway, because it's the intent of the heart, it's what you believe. But anyway, it references masculine and feminine energy within God. So basically, the father is the mother, same. So I just wanted to add that in because I think that's an important concept, and nobody's really talking about that. And you've got two camps of thought. You've got the one that says, oh, well, all the Apocrypha books and all the Gnostics were not part of the original canon. Or you've got people that are like, oh, all of these should have been, but they weren't. You've got a lot of confusion. So I'm just a really interesting thing based upon what you're going to talk about.
I mean, and it's so important. It seems so stupid, like, oh, 369, it's first. But once you start looking at it and you're like, okay, so the masculine and feminine energies are prevalent. And then you look at today's society, which is totally like throughout generations been masculinized. And you look at a lot of the standardized biblical teachings that were written by really masculinized kings, and then you
Mm-hmm.
compare it to some of the, like, I'll put out, like, if you compare it to something like the Pistis Sophia, which is a Gnostic text, you can
Yep.
see texts like that. You can see the importance for the divine feminine energy, and society and mass has been sort of stripped by just the structure of our governments from generations ago. It's been like this one mistake turned into a snowball effect throughout all of our generations. This
Mm-hmm.
this
And
dis
the women's lib movement basically was in a way said to be this feminist movement, but feminism is we've put buckets of gender, but in all reality, we all have masculine and feminine properties within our individual self. Now, some might say, if you're thinking of that from a literal standpoint, no, I'm not talking about being a hermaphrodite. Okay, I'm just throwing that out. That's not what I'm talking about. It's a
it's a
mental state.
it's finding the balance between understanding the feminine energy and the masculine
Yes.
energy. All these generations have been like, it's been like men and women are like cats and dogs. They're like different as night and
Mhm.
day and all that. And it is dogma created
Yep.
by the powerhouses, because I want people to see this disparity, because it's humans have been robbed of their authenticity, of their natural essence. And when you say that the people are like, I forgot how you phrased it earlier in the show, but I translated it as, people are not, it's not like they're not unknowing, it's that they're hypnotized by this
Mhm.
dogmatic state of work, eat, sleep, provide, and clean the house, go, try to get things together. It's like people these days don't have the time to look within and process anything other than what they've been
Mhm.
spoon fed to believe. So people like you and me are sort of unique because we're so desperate for the truth. We're digging into these texts trying to find the truth and the meaning. And when you start finding the truth and peeling back history, and you're vetting it one book against another and comparing one culture against another and seeing how stories repeat themselves, and then when you pair the science to it and see that quantum physics and the like magnetic science sort of solves the riddle and the bridge between science, religion, and just, it's just so strange how everything
Yeah.
connects. But Da Vinci
Well,
Code,
everything's been put into these predetermined buckets, and I think why I'm so grateful that I was able to stumble upon you is because I was that person. You know what I'm saying? And I don't even mean that to separate myself from everyone or now from everyone, because I am we are all each other. And so I why I'm sharing what I share, and I'm sure you're the same, is that I am so excited that I've realized that I can be what I feel in my gut is who I should be, and that is a magnificent feeling just to be free of being told, "No, you belong in this bucket." That's a lie. That's not true. But this is something I had to have self-discovery with. So I never encourage anyone to just take my word for it, because that's what we've been told our whole lives, is to put ourselves under this specific narrative. There is a way to live harmoniously with each other and exist, and it almost sounds to our minds that have been programmed, and I hate to call it that, even, you know, there is a way to exist, and that existence, when we're all different, isn't chaos.
That's
That
it.
is truly diverse
Yeah,
diversity.
and it's why, like,
That is.
it's this topic is so vulnerable to, like, get out, because it goes against the status quo. It goes against the norms, basically saying throughout history we've had these deficiencies in energy, and they're essentially, I believe, like, normalizing themselves. I believe the sun's, like, relationship with the earth
Mhm.
is moving these energies in a way where I'm feeling it, and my sixth sense, which I believe sixth sense, any type of special psychic abilities or anything that people have, I believe these are just natural human essences that we've been
Yes.
made to believe that we should be scared of, or there's a dogma attached to it that it's bad. I believe that the word magic is just science in disguise for science that they don't want us to understand, because if you understood the power of your own self with self-realization, you know the kingdom is within you, which the Bible says. The Bible
It
says you
does.
find your
Yeah.
peace, you find your serenity within yourself. And
Well,
it's
yeah.
it's one thing for someone to hear that. It's another thing for someone to put in the work, looking within and actually having that aha moment and being like, "Oh my god, I understand it." Like, I truly understand that this present moment, what I'm doing is creating my reality. And if that's such a
Yeah.
powerful, that's a power that people forgot they had, that their now moment can vibrate throughout time, and we can actually sculpt society based on our mindset. So if we have more peaceful, loving, heart-centered people who understand the shift, with all the stuff that the tyrannical people want to fear and scare people into, we can actually create a society of peace and harmony, so that the kingdom is actually here, heaven on earth,
It
if that
is.
makes any
And
sense.
I want to point out too, now that you're saying this, when we do another discussion, when we do another discussion, I'm going to really think on this, because you spurred something in my mind, and I'm trying to figure out how to explain this. Important, because I'm still at that point where I'm remembering, like, my other way of thinking and this new way of thinking, and it's still really fresh. So I'm going, like, me personally, I'm going back and forth between the two, and I'm referencing that because I'm trying to understand this entire concept, okay? And so through discussion with people, and by the way, we've talked about this before. Like, I've done this before, right? I am human. See me, they can just hear my voice, but I am a human being. But I mean, we tend to hear something. I don't know if anyone can identify with this. I guess I would think most people can, but I'm just going back to my old, not old mind, the other way of thinking, right? And I'm kind of merging this together, and I'm thinking, "Oh wow, I totally did this." Like, I would hear something, what you're talking about right now. So the other way of thinking, which I feel like is very polar, if you will, to one side, um, is I would hear something like this and I'd be like, "Oh, these crystal people, they're feel whatever," but yet I'm a super feeler, right?
Yep.
So I'm like, it's just amazing say, yeah, Wendy, what are you trying to say? What I'm trying to say, that's the other thing. You have conversations with yourself a lot. I always wondered why I did, and this is why. So, but I want to merge that together in some examples because it helps me actually having these conversations
And
because
it's
I'm
legit.
trying to figure it out.
Like
Yeah, it's
the
like this is
piece,
my authentic process.
the piece is
Yeah,
like,
it is.
it's like the other day, my epiphany on the Maharishi effect. Like, I finally got a terminology that explains my vision, how I can see such positivity in such negative times. It's
Mhm.
truly your consciousness, and it's brain kung fu. Oh no, the dog and the
It
cat are
is brain
fighting.
kung fu.
It's brain kung
Yeah.
fu.
Well, there's
And it's like this
it
this
is.
reasoning, and Western culture has chalked up people going through spiritual awakenings as like all these different alphabet things, and autism, and all these
Yeah.
things. It's just people are their own authentic self, and they go through this life, and no, some people think and wonder why they're on this planet, what their true essence is, and some people don't. So I think maybe this podcast is for like the people that are lost and feeling, like the feelers, I guess.
Yeah, or even somebody that wants to challenge. I always say what I do when I'm trying to prove something to myself is I try to prove it wrong. Does that make sense? I
Yeah.
do the opposite. So when I start a journey on and I really intentionally try to do this, if I'm thinking something, I go at the research as if my thinking is wrong and I try to prove it wrong. And it's amazing what you find. Sometimes I do prove it wrong. Sometimes I prove it right, but I never go into it looking for things to validate it. I look at things looking to like dispel it, like make it wrong. And
It's just your way of
in that
dissecting.
area, I think that
Yep.
would be neutral, Mari, wouldn't it in a way?
That's
So when
it's
I hold my mind in that state, yeah, I find the
yeah.
truth every time for my
Well, and
yeah.
this is
My
a lot
yeah.
of a lot of symbology. Like the symbol for God is also like a circle with a dot in it, and some people say it's an eye, but it's perspective. So if you're
Mhm.
standing in the middle of the circle and you're walking, you're turning yourself around in that circle, you're getting 360 degrees of perception. So when you look at a situation with, say, like something political, if you're only watching Fox News, you're only going to get that perspective, and that's a mainstream perspective. Is that really the case? You look to the left and you find out that, the stuff that they're saying, and then you're standing in the middle and you're understanding that you see things in the right that are wrong, and you see things on the side and the left that's wrong, and then you start seeing the duality of everything. The more information you take in and you perceive, the more clarity you get on the doubleness of every one thing. So the way that the puppet masters have sculpted societies to keep us polarized, and the way that we combat as people is to unify together with some natural laws of just being good people and
Yeah.
looking
And we're
with
taking that all within, which
looking
is where
within and being
yep.
fair and balanced, and getting back to, just what Jesus embodied. And I think we could
Which is
probably,
a state of consciousness.
it's
It's a state. And
right
people say,
there.
"Oh, that's just a story." Well, it is, but it doesn't really matter if it's just a story because it's a story of, you can say, "Oh, it wasn't," and I'm honoring all the different belief standpoints. I didn't live then. So I can't touch Jesus and say, but to me, I'm seeing the same concept in
And,
all the different religions.
and
The
you
same
can
thing.
you can you can apply energy physics to the perceptions of whatever biblical text you look at, you can see once you have this round, this non-dual, this non-duality perspective where you understand both sides or all sides, you'll see that God is essentially, in scientific terms, he's the ground, the center, 0 point of all creation, which gets into quantum physics, and it
Mm-hmm.
gets into like you just it gets into multi-dimensional landscapes in the science world, which really gets my mind like going crazy. But
Yeah.
I think both of us, what we want to get, the message to get out to people is to sort of learn to zoom out and understand that there's more sides and perspectives. And my cat is fighting with the dog in the background. I don't know if you can hear that, but
That they're not practicing.
I'm
They're
so
not
sorry.
practicing this
You guys are, you're
I
showing
would you say?
everybody the chaos in society. My dog and cat acting like cats and dogs.
Yeah.
No,
What
my
did you say
cat.
earlier? They're not practicing the Tai Chi. They're not at neutral, this cat and dog. They need to get
No, they're
themselves
not at
together.
neutral. They're not at neutral. But it's like the more it's crazy to me to apply energy physics to a historic and biblical text, because it just shows the simplicity, and then it also highlights how complex the the dogmatic systems have made everything to be, to stir confusion and make it hard for people to discern things. They have us segregated by religion, even though when you break down religion to energy physics, it all's the same thing. And labels and fearing people into whatever labels are awful, and it stirs confusion. And once you start seeing the doubleness in things, you'll see how the confusion is spurred amongst
Mm-hmm.
society, and things just start, you start connecting the dots, and you start seeing the sameness in everything, like everything
Yeah, you
down to
do.
the atom.
It's kind of almost like everything's the same. Like it just got shattered, and there are segments of the truth in every single thing, and then there's like added stuff on top of it. I don't know, kind of like maybe it was all one concept at one time. Call me crazy.
It's like
Yeah.
it's like to me, I look at everything as like everything has magnetisms. We're all sort of like magnetic beings, sort of playing off each other's sound frequency and vibration. Even though it's something that our human brains aren't capable of seeing, our spirits are feeling it. And it's that consciousness of it that I think, if we can get people off mainstream and more in their heads, looking within and feeling again, we can have a nice shift in society, and maybe hopefully not give them the doom and gloom that they crave for so deeply.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's when I learned about magnetism, which we don't even have time to go into all that in this one thing. But when I, as a spiritual being, or whatever you want to call it, because, we're all spiritual, we're all, this is the thing, we all have these capabilities of understanding, is what I've come to. But dense. And I admittedly say so. It took me over 40 years to figure this out. I was living in this dense existence, but it was my desire to seek, I guess is what it is. And I didn't seek with just one narrative. I truly saw it, and I had to walk down some paths that I'm like, I don't want to be here, get me out. You know what I'm saying? In my mind, not physically, but
Well, I think
I was open to it.
that's a big part of it too, like getting so disgusted with this world and everything. A part of it, the first step into understanding, is detaching yourself from it. So, and that's a painful process, and some people can do it right away. Sometimes it takes a lifetime for people to understand that. But detachment from this world to actually step outside it and then look within is not an easy process. And it's oftentimes like really, I think people underestimate how painful it is to witness how far we've strayed
Oh
from
man. I
a
mean, I'm gonna tell you,
workable
yeah, it's the
society.
most terrifying, beautiful thing I've ever seen, I suppose.
You see all the horrors, but then you also
But
see
it's
all
not
the
really terrifying. It's just like I always, yeah, all the stuff. I
you
always say
see all
this
the
saying I heard it one
potential.
time, and it really, yeah, it really resonated with me. Was how do we know the chains that bind us if we never move? And I was like, whoa, I got that. I was
Yeah.
like, it is so true. If you think about that, literally, if you're standing in one place and you're always in that place, somebody can come around and literally put chains around your feet and you would never know. Now I know. It would be like, yeah, I would, because I'd look down.
I think as humans we
Or
learn by
literally, you know,
you learn by
thinking,
experience. So if things are put into a parable like that, you click, you can relate to it. You can be like, "Oh, I get it." When I was reading the Pistis Sophia, I was blown away because I was able to actually match things that happened to me spiritually to something of a like to a spiritual text, like the dove, seeing the dove. That really stands out to me because I've actually seen a dove, and I've had, a man say he's coming to me out of thin air, which I'll get into in another topic. But it's the perspective and the feeling and the experience and the reflection. It's all about just being in that moment and absorbing as a observer and sort of not latching on to any answer, but just sort of gathering things in as a fence sitter and being like, okay, this is my understanding, and baby steps, I guess, along the way,
yeah.
everybody.
Well, and I think we're taught taught, but when I say taught, I mean, we have to understand that we're all born into a society and then we're told certain things. And then some of us come into it earlier. And I feel like we're always fighting our natural state of existence and the state of existence we're supposed to live in. I've felt this battle. I don't know if anybody else has, but my entire life I've felt this battle. And
And
it's been very internally noisy, very noisy. Like a
that's
lot of
because you're
yeah.
living on a slave planet.
Well, I realized I had changed. This is why I'm so frustrated. I literally have chains all over my body.
That's
So,
right. So
yeah,
it's
like I
like
realized,
we live in hell. So how do you deal with it? How do you
we're not.
find heaven in hell? I mean, you find heaven within your own being, and we create our reality from that internal source, which is, I see so much beauty in that. And I don't know, sky's the limit.
Well, well, it is. And I think, too, just to point out that when I used to hear what you're saying right now, I'll tell you what my mind used to think of. Well, that's just imagining things, but reality is, see. But I guess to point it out in a scientific perspective, the transmutation of energy and how it affects us, and the concept of a magnet, if people want to think of it this way, is so literally precise to our existence and our happiness. I mean, I'm talking from somebody that thought what I believe a lot of people think when they hear what you're saying. I get it. I get
It's like God is a big
that thinking.
magnet.
Constant. That was the argument in my head, right?
Yep.
Well, the argument in my head was, yeah, like, oh, that's just a fantasy world, Mari. Get back to reality. Okay. This is my mind, my old mind speaking to you right now with what you're saying. Like, just saying, I'm being honest. But I was wrong in my perspective. But hey, I challenge everyone to try to look into this and just allow your mind to go there, because I can promise you, nothing's going to happen to you if you let your mind think that way for a second. I promise. Promise.
Well, and I mean, also, I'm asking for people really through all this like crazy thought process, through all of this, it's like a thought project. What I want people
It is.
to do is make sure that they're owning their own consciousness, and that they don't have these
Mhm.
outside sources sort of laying you down with dogma, making you think a certain way when it's not really. Where did that come from? Who said
Mhm.
that? And who's like, if you follow up the change on mainstream media, it's the right and the left wind up turning into the same entities.
Mhm.
So you really are on your own if you want true truth. And the truth is, like, we have strayed really far away from God and our
Mhm.
source, and that source is our power, standing with the teachings of Christ, or who. It doesn't really matter what perspective you choose, even if you just latch onto it as
Yeah.
the understanding of magnetic physics or energy physics, where there's a
Yep.
positive, a negative, and a neutral. Like, if you're standing in the middle, you're an observer at that point, and you are seeing the world around you, and then your action is then whatever is your own creation. So if you
Yeah.
start getting tied up with social media and you get angry and it's frustrating and you get off and you're like, oh, I hate social media, and like, and it always makes you feel that way, you have to be able to step outside yourself and be like, you know what? This external source has hijacked my well being, my mind. It's hijacked my peace, my serenity, my kingdom within. I need to, like, step back in the middle and maybe reassess whether or not I use this as a platform, because even Elon Musk came out and said that the algorithms that Twitter uses right now is to stir engagement. So how do they stir engagement?
Mhm.
They make people mad. So there's an actual algorithm where people are fed these articles that trigger people, and it spurs engagement. So at that point, then Twitter has your mind, you're pouring your energy into this argument that's not gonna make the world a better place and not make yourself a better place at peace with
Yeah.
yourself. It's like you'll take that aggravation with you wherever you go, whether you're on Twitter or not. It's like it festers within you. The hardest thing for me was to, like, put down Facebook. It was like an addiction.
Mhm.
Like, it took me like a few days to be like, I can live without this. I'm okay. And then the longer I'm not using it, I came up with all
Mhm.
these reasons why to use it, like for my channel and solar physics and all that. But the longer I'm away from it, the more peace I have. It's like you're buying
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
your own brain space, your own critical thinking skills, your own peace of mind. So I guess we'll
People
just tie
use
it up.
that stuff as a Yeah, people use that stuff as a weapon, I feel like, lately, and I didn't notice it until then, and it's not even a conscious way of doing it.
No, they've said
We
subconsciously
all
hijacked
we
us.
all have contributed to this. Yeah, we've all contributed to the state that we're in.
Cat and my dog are fighting again. So I guess
Yeah.
that's time for me to wrap it up. We'll chat
Yeah,
another
that we
time. We'll see what people think about this. We didn't go too far out, though. This is pretty mild for us, I
Oh, yeah,
think.
we've gone to some pretty good places, but, agree, right? Sometimes, but then we bring out things in each other, which I wanna point out because societal norm has a lot of people fighting over a lot of things that they're actually talking about the same thing and they don't even realize it, but that's for another time.
It is. It's like this I call it the art of perception. Like, people need to slow down. In times where they have us rushing this way and that way with work, eat, sleep, job schedules, kids going left, right, all over the place, like in a busy lifestyle that they've created for us, it's important to create spaces of calm and slowness so you can gather your thoughts and think clearly. And we'll see how it goes. Everybody, we're
Yeah.
all a work in progress.
Yeah, heck yeah.
It's an ongoing brain space. It's mental kung fu. You're always trying to
Mhm.
discipline and condition yourself. But I think going into the grand solar minimum and going into some of the adversity that our higher ups are sort of creating with food supply chain issues and everything, people need to be in a good brain space and being able to own your consciousness, which they have flat out said they want to take from you, like through the WEF and Harari, whatever his name is. It's important to
Mm-hmm.
own your own thoughts and
Well, and
just
we can change, we can mutate that energy. And if you think about it like energy vampires, if you
that's what
feeding
the
off
media,
that,
yeah, the
it's
mainstream.
not like you don't they are. It's not like they just disappear overnight. But actually they could if everybody transmuted the energy like immediately, but that's not realistic.
Can you
So
imagine
or
if everybody turned off like mainstream media and just started talking to one another? Like,
it's why they won't shut down the internet until the last possible minute. They do a lot of threats about that, but that's the power, because if we're not watching and feeding into that narrative, they lose the power. If everyone could and realize that that's the real plan, and I say this as we're talking on the internet, and
yep.
it's funny, but
They
it
can't
doesn't matter. I mean,
they
it's
can't take us all. That's why I think doing this as a thought collective, like Wendy's gonna have her own podcast, and there's a few other people that are doing their own podcasts with a similar mindset. And if it's possible for people peacefully working from their heart center to push the human race forward, is that possible? I'm interested in that thought collective. I'm interested in being a part of that, and whatever I can do to sort of
yeah.
show people the simplicity of looking within and whatever. But it does take a lot. The understanding comes from processing and transmuting the energy, the trauma, understanding where your trauma came from, and understanding that generations upon generations upon generations of hurt have created the way that
Mhm.
most people are feeling right now. And we have to let that go and forgive the past to move forward and paint a new future based on the learnings from all of our mistakes on how polarized that we are right now. Can we learn from it? Can we move forward? Hope so.
Yeah,
So with that,
exactly.
I'm gonna end the show. So did you want to say goodbye to everyone, Wendy?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on. And yeah, I'm trying to do my own podcast, but I've had the same problem. I'm like, no, everyone's going to come at me. Like they're going to say bad things about me if I think like in different ways, but that's just fear. That's fear. And
And
that's
that's
kind of
that's
silly.
why I'm glad I had you on, because some of these topics are uncomfortable, and I've been really kicked in the ass a few times by some Christians, but I call them hypocritical Christians because they wouldn't have kicked my ass if they were acting like Jesus. I would have understood like
Hmm.
their bitch, but
Yeah.
you
Well, and
know,
that's the thing is like our intent is to truly like I never really have the right definitive answer. I just know what it feels like and what I want to feel like when we all exist together and love each other. And
that's
that's
right.
that's the place I'm coming from. You could tell me anything, you could tell me something I disagree with, and we should be able to have a conversation about that without hating each other. This
Yep.
is this is what I'm saying.
It's
And no,
it's
it seems hard to do.
it's hard. It's very hard for people to do. So we'll figure out a
Yep.
new topic and we'll figure out something next time. You guys take
Yep.
care.
Turn it to the sky.